Well, hello everyone, Paul here again at RoJoBe Music, and this video, or these upcoming videos, are about my next project, which is this Yamaha acoustic guitar. Needs quite a bit of work, so it's going to need a new set of strings. Obviously, for some reason it's got, or appears to have, electric guitar strings fitted to it at the moment, so they're not going to sound too good. So, new set of strings. It's going to need a new nut, a new saddle, and new bridge pins. And it's almost certainly going to need the frets leveled and recrowned. And the whole thing obviously needs a really good clean up. It's absolutely caked in DNA, which is nice. So this particular model is the FG300A, Yamaha FG300A. Now, Yamaha produced this particular model in the early to mid 90s. So this guitar is somewhere in the region of 30 years old. And it's showing signs of it. It's got a fair bit of wear and tear. There is quite a bit of wood exposed around the edges, but it appears overall to be in pretty good shape. It doesn't seem to be any cracks in the body or in the neck joint. I don't think there's any loose braces, but once I've got the strings off, I'll check that again. So it's basically I'd say a light refurbishment, but I've already given the customer a quote for this job, and after giving it some thought, I've underpriced it a bit, but that's okay, because actually changing the components on this is not it's not that difficult, and it doesn't take that long. But because it needs a new nut and a new saddle, that's where a lot of the time goes, because you have to shape and fit the nut and the saddle perfectly, and especially the height, because that's where you get your string action from, your string height. So it's crucial that at the nut end it's as low as you can possibly get it without actually touching the frets, and it's pretty much the same with the other end at the saddle as well. You need to get the action pretty much as low as you can, so that's where a lot of the time will be in this job, adjusting the height of the nut and the saddle to get the correct action, string height above the fretboard. That can take quite some time, and it can often mean, particularly with the saddle and the nut as well to an extent, about removing them, making a small adjustment, put them back in, tighten the strings up. So you can see, loosening the strings, taking the thing out, adjusting it, put it back in, tighten the strings. There can be quite a lot of time involved in those two jobs alone, and also leveling and recrowning the frets. That can also be fairly time consuming. So it's going to be a relatively long project in that sense, but as I said, I've already quoted the customer. I don't want to go over the quote that I've given him, so I'm on a bit time restraint. But if time goes over and I spend longer on it than I'd anticipated, then so be it. I'm not going to, up the price of the job, because I've already given the customer a quote. And also, the customer who brought this in wants his daughter to learn English with us, and he also bought a guitar from me for his daughter. So yes, this is one of my good customers. So I want to keep the price that I quoted and do a really, really good job. I mean, always do a good job anyway. Always keep my standards high. Always make sure the guitar or whatever instrument looks its best when I finish doing the job. and I almost always go above and beyond anyway. You know, people come in, like the last job I did, the Yamaha F310, just wanted a restring, but I also did a very light fret job on it, cleaned and oiled the fretboard and the bridge, fixed a tuner that was actually coming away from the body, so I took the tuner off, filled the hole in, re-drilled it, re-screwed it and fitted it back on, all at no extra cost. I always go above and beyond and make sure the instrument is in perfect condition when it leaves my shop. Okay, so enough waffle, let's crack on with this job. So as I said, it needs a new set of strings, so I've got a set here waiting to go on. These are one of my more expensive sets in the shop, but you know, like I said, I want to do a great job. I've got the new bridge pins there, and I've got a couple of saddles. Now that's one thing on these guitars. The fretboard and therefore the saddle and the nut are radiused. They're not straight across the top. They're radiused. So obviously makes the job a little bit more tricky, but it's not too bad. Now one of the saddles I have here is radiused, as you can see, but it's not long enough this way, so that's not going to be any good. I've got another one here which is the right length, but as you can see it's flat topped, so I'll need to put a radius in it. Also, one thing I noticed which I was a little surprised about, and it seems to be the same with the F310s as well, they don't have a compensated saddle. Let me just show you very quickly what I mean by that. So normally on an acoustic guitar, the saddle is compensated for correct intonation. So you can see there are angles cut into the top of the saddle. So you can see this one here is angled one way, and let me just get my glasses on. Okay, so this one is angled this way, and then there's another angle which comes up this way. So these are for the B and the E string, so that you get the correct intonation. And even, I'm not sure how well you're going to see that, the angle of the top, the ridge, is kind of offset. It goes at an angle, so that you get the correct intonation on all of the strings. But these Yamahas don't have these compensated saddles. Hadn't noticed that before, and I was a little surprised, but in some ways that makes it a little bit easier. So those are the saddles, and I've got various nuts, and you're not really going to be able to see this, but actually you can there. So some of them are kind of white, some of them are just off-white, some of them are kind of ivory coloured. I want to go with one that's kind of yellowed, because of the age of this guitar. There's quite a lot of patina in it, so even the original nut, you can see, obviously it's not in good condition. It's very yellowed. And another thing I've noticed about this guitar, it doesn't appear to have the original tuners on it. Those of you who know anything about Yamaha guitars, they usually have the closed geared chrome tuners on, so I don't think these are original. And doing a little bit of research, looking at the specs of this model, it did say that they were fitted with the chrome closed gear tuners, so I'm almost certain these are not original. Now you can see they appear to all have some cracks in the middle where the actual post goes through the button. They are a matching set, so that's one good thing. They are looking very aged. They are probably older than the guitar itself, to be honest. But they're really smooth, nice, and there's no play or give in any of them. They turn really smoothly, they feel really nice, and I'm guessing that they are pretty good quality tuners. I'm not sure, I can't see a brand name on them. They're quite well rusted. But as I said, they all operate really smoothly and nicely, so I'm not going to change those at all. I'm going to leave those on. They add to the patina. The only thing I am going to do is just clean them up a little bit, just a light brush with a wire brush, and put a dab of lubricant on them. I think they actually add to the character. I mean, all the buttons, you can't see it very well on the video, but all the buttons are quite yellowed and there is some cracking in them, but none of them are loose. They're not going to come off. If I was worried about that, I'd drop a little bit of CA glue or super glue inside those cracks, but there doesn't seem to be a problem. The fretboard itself and the frets, it's pretty grimy, and certainly at the top end you can see there are quite a lot of fingernail grooves. I'm not really going to be able to remove those, maybe one or two of the shallower ones, because to try and remove those you'd have to take a lot of material off the fretboard, which is not ideal. But I will, clean it up, tidy that up a bit. The frets are not going to need replacing. There are a few grooves in some of the frets, but they're not bad at all. There's still plenty of meat left on them. When I do the fret leveling, I will take a little bit of that out anyway, but they're certainly not in a state at the moment that they need replacing, because replacing all the frets, that's another big job, to be honest, and the price would be considerably more. Okay, so I think it's time to crack on with this, so let's just turn you around there a bit. Okay. It's not the best angle, but yeah, that's okay. So all the strings are already loose. Just grab a chair. Okay. All the strings are already loose. I just need to remove them. Let's do it the quick way, shall we? Okay. Right, so first of all, I'm going to remove them from this end. Obviously these bridge pins need replacing. We've got one there that's got no head on it at all. There's one there that's got a black dot and the rest don't, so it's not even a matching set. So the customer requested new ones anyway, so these are going to be going to the bin. Let's use my proper puller so I don't damage the bridge. Okay, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so again the high E string is missing. There's just 5 strings to remove. That to one side. Okay, and I'll take them off the headstock end. I mean, in fairness, as I said, this seems to have electric guitar strings on it anyway, and they weren't fitted particularly well. Oh my goodness. Have to go through the other way with that one. Okay, that's one. Wow, what a mess. Okay, I'm going to pause the video here while I get all these off. I'm just using up footage time, so I'll see you in a second. Okay, so that's all of the strings removed. There's a bit more of a faff than I was hoping. Now I've just had a quick look over the guitar once I've got the strings off. There are definitely no loose braces inside, so that's a big relief, because that can be a pretty tricky job. The tuners I've checked over again. As I said, they're all good. The screws are a little bit loose in some of them, but I figure I might as well take the tuners out to make it easier to clean them and also the guitar itself. So off camera, I did actually with a pencil just numbered all of them 1 to 6, just so that I know that I'll get them back in the same place afterwards. Usually it doesn't matter too much, but sometimes, particularly with older guitars and older tuners, you know, it's just a good idea to put them back in the same place. So I'm going to remove them for now. All the screws are fairly loose anyway, so it shouldn't be a problem. And I'm just going to put them in my little storage pot here, which has actually got a lid as well, just so that I don't lose them, or any of the screws, more importantly, or as importantly. As I said, it's just going to make it easier to clean both the tuners and the guitar itself with them removed, and I can worry about those later, because you know, apart from anything else, this guitar needs a really good clean. Not going to do a full clean before doing the work, there's not much point, but I will probably get a majority of the grime off to begin with. Okay, so that's 3 out already. These screws are coming out nice and easily because they're all fairly loose. But the good thing is that the heads on the screws are not damaged. It looks as though they've not been in and out many times, if at all. And the threads and the holes in the guitar itself all seem good, which is nice. I mean, you know, often when you work on older instruments, as you start to, you know, strip it down, you will sometimes notice, you know, other little jobs that are going to need doing. But as I said, at the moment, apart from, you know, this guitar showing its age, it's got quite a few nicks and scars and cracks and bumps and everything else, but it's all in one piece, so there's nothing to actually fix as such. Right, that's all the tuners in there on the screws, lid on. I'm not going to lose anything. Okay, put that to one side. So, as I said, all of the screw holes look to be nice. Doesn't seem to be any problems there, any you know, oversized holes. If there was, it's easy enough. Just fill it in with a toothpick usually. Glue it in and then re-drill it, or sometimes even just re-screw it. I'm not going to take the ferrules off. I'm going to leave those in place. If any of them fall off, then I will. But they all seem to be pretty tight in there, so I'm going to leave those in place. That's easy enough to clean it like that, not a problem. And because they're metal, and the tuners as well, I will clean them up and probably give them a light polish with some metal polish as well. Not too much, as I said, because I want to keep the patina. I just want to take the grime off it, really. Okay, so let's see what next. I'll tell you what I will do. I'm going to take a truss rod key, and the truss rod adjustment is just up in there. So I'm going to straighten the neck. At the moment it does have a slight back bow, which is the opposite of what you want anyway. I'm going to straighten the neck prior to doing the fret leveling job. You want the neck straight when you do it, so that the neck itself is straight, and then you'll find any high or low spots on the frets and file them all so that they're all level. And then I will take a recrowning file and go over all of the frets, because once you file them, then they'll be flat on the top, and you want to put a curve on the top. So the recrowning file is what does that, puts all the crown, if you like, back on the frets, and I may need to file the ends of the frets as well once I've finished that. I probably will. As for the fretboard itself, as I said, there are some fingernail gouges in there, which I won't be able to do a lot about. It's just, and that's the worst one right there, which is where you'd expect it. The first fret of the B string, that's where the worst one is. And it's not, I've seen a lot worse than that before and still be playable. So that's not going to be a problem. I mean, the fretboard is filthy and the frets as well. But yeah, that's not really going to need any, any major work on there. It's just clean up and fret leveling and recrowning. I think actually before I do the truss rod, I'm just going to get this nut off. Now they're always glued in place, and as you can probably see, it's recessed under here. So you've got to be careful when you take the nut out not to break any of the wood. So it's usually a tap. Tappy stick. So I like to use this one. I mean, if the nut's going to be replaced, it doesn't matter if the nut gets damaged. So I'll use this with a nice flat head that side and a bit pointy that end to remove the nut. So you just again, you've got to be careful. You just give it a light tap. Yeah, it's just chipping away, so it's no good anyway. Giving up a bit of a fight, so I'll take a wide chisel and put that against the nut, and again give it a little bit of a tap. There she goes. So that's all it takes, just some light tapping, and there it is. And you can see as I was doing that, the top of it was just chipping away. It is a plastic nut, you can tell by the machine holes underneath there. But it's so old, it's literally just crumbling to pieces. It was unsavable. Yeah, I mean it's just crumbling away from age. I would suggest it's also probably been exposed to weather conditions, and judging by the colouring of it and how it feels kind of tacky and nasty, it's going to be partly DNA, but also maybe whatever oil people have treated the fretboard with before has had some effect on that. It's completely trashed. So, and the new nuts that I have, so I have many different ones. I want to try and go with a more yellowed one to fit in with the patina of the guitar. And these ones are all radiused already, so it will just be a matter of adjusting the height. So I would take some off the bottom of the nut, and possibly the edges might need to be filed a little bit as well, because sometimes they're slightly wider than the neck of a guitar. The slot itself, where the nut came out, it's pretty good. It's got a little bit of glue in there, which I'll scrape out later. Right, so now I need a truss rod key, which is simply an Allen key. And as I said, at the moment there is a bit of a back bow in the neck. So if it's bowed backwards, you need to loosen the truss rod, because as you tighten the truss rod, it pulls it back. So by loosening it, you relieve the tension and it starts to come back to straight. Usually about a quarter of a turn at a time. Oh, hello. We've got a problem already. Okay, that's unusual size. That's much bigger than they normally are. Let's try this one. That's the kiddie. I've always got plenty of these on hand. So when you're adjusting a truss rod, you have to be very careful, because it's under tension anyway. And if you go, too hard at it, you could break something. So usually a quarter of a turn at a time, but there's no strings on this, so it's not under any tension. So I'm going to do, oh my God, am I going to do anything? There we go. Oh, that's really tight. There we go. It's always a bit scary, that first bit, when you need it to break loose. So I'm going to go about half a turn at first and then see what it looks like. There we go. Ah, it's feeling better already. Ah, that's always the scary part, that is. Okay, I think another quarter turn might do that. Let's see. Come on. A bit more. Let's go another half turn. 1, 2. Let's try that. It's almost there. It doesn't seem to be moving all that much, actually. Let's try another quarter turn. Yeah, it's not quite there. That's surprising. That's taken a bit more. I think quite possibly that's the shape it wants to take. It's you know, because wood gets a memory, especially in, you know, musical instruments where everything's under tension and it's being held in a certain position against its will most of the time, and it will get a memory. So perhaps that's where it likes to be, with a slight back bow. Now that's not a problem, to be honest, because if it stays like that, I can, yeah, it's almost there, to be honest. That's pretty much there. And even if it did stay with a very slight back bow, which it has now, you can quite often take that out when you do the fret leveling. Okay, so I'm running out of time. That's it for this first video of this